Welcome to the Old Ways for the New Age podcast, where we weave the threads of traditional living into the tapestry of modern day life. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm a naturopath, herbalist, and passionate plant lover here to discuss topics such as daily ritual, intentional living, witchcraft, herbal astrology, plus sharing interviews with inspiring guests, and so much more. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a podcast review if you enjoy my content. I wish to honour and express my deepest gratitude to the traditional custodians of the unceded land on which I live and record, the Wanjerabara people. I want to acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging, and their continued connection to the land, sea and community. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Always for the New Age podcast. My name is Hannah and today I have an extra special guest with me. This is Ellene. Some of you may have listened to an episode with her before. She is the naturopath by trade, witch by nature, and she does amazing pendulum clearings, tarot readings, all sorts of amazing offerings, so you can go and check her website out. We'll tell you all about that later. But today we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A and answer some of your questions that you sent to us on Instagram. So let's dive right in. Hi, Ellene. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Hannah. I'm excited. I'm so excited. We've got so many weird little questions and I cannot wait to dive into this.
Yeah, we've got some interesting ones and they kind of span across the witchy new age spectrum, but also some of the health things as well, as we are both naturopaths. So we do have that side to us as well. So do you want to kick us off with one of your questions?
You know what? Yes, let's do that. And I will ask you this because we actually had a phone call before we jumped on, guys. So we were like, we need to stop telling each other these questions because we're actually doing the podcast without doing the podcast. I would like to know,
which I do believe we've actually done in previous interviews. We've done it before. We always end up calling and talking about it before.
Absolutely. We should just record our phone calls. Honestly, I don't know what we're doing. One of the questions I got from one of my beautiful people is, where did your witchiness come from? Did it dawn on you one day, or is it something that's always been there? Have you learnt from someone? Like, essentially, what was your journey?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think everybody's origin stories are a little bit different. But you go first. Tell us your origin story, because I've mentioned mine before, but I don't know if they've heard yours yet.
Okay. My origin story is, it cracks me up because it's a little bit convoluted. It comes from a few different places, so I'll try and be succinct in the way that I talk about it. But as some of you may be able to just tell from my actual first name, my name is Ellene, which is a Greek name. Both sides of my family are Greek and hairy and loud and all of the things. So I think there is always an innate part of our culture that is incredibly superstitious. Blue is for luck. You wear the evil eye for protection. You spit on people in the best way possible when they say something complimentary. It's a strange little place. But like the best, absolutely the best. So both sides of my family actually have, I guess, medicine women, witchy people on both sides of the coin, good and bad. So I didn't have any conscious knowledge of that growing up whatsoever. I was just the strange little kid that thought they could talk to trees and animals. And I'm not saying that I couldn't, but I was right every time I think I got a message. So whatever. It was just it was a beautiful way to sort of grow up without any pressure of that knowing, I guess. And because we have a slightly dysfunctional family, not only was that not a lot of that stuff discussed, it definitely wasn't passed on, at least not directly. So probably more genetically and energetically was it sort of coming through. So that's kind of like the familial, how I got the witchiness-y stuff. But it was very much once I had gotten out of places of toxicity within my life, was this stuff able to really start to overwhelm the living crap out of me in my life. And I couldn't deny the fact that my obsession was this. Some people might call it an ADHD hyperfixation. Some people might just call it just a sickness. I'm not sure. But whatever it is, I couldn't deny it. It was pendulums and flower essences. And I call naturopathy my gateway drug to all of this, because that's where I learnt my beautiful flower essences, and it just expanded through there. Like, that gave me the foundation to have the I guess the sciencey knowledge, and then also gave me permission to just explore education in all different ways. So I, that's how I've ended up with all of this stuff behind me. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. But it's really, for me, some people, I guess, get born into it through the toxicity. For me, mine couldn't come through in the way that it needed to while that was consuming me. So once that sort of passed in my life, it was just like open doors through a full bombardment, like download after download after download. And when you don't know what downloads are, you just think you're losing your mind. So it's fun.
Yeah, it was a bit of a snowball for you.
Yeah.
Started and then just like kept going and kept building kind
Just
of
hasn't
ferociously,
stopped.
I would say. No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Mine's a little different. I have like I have a very pinpointed moment in time where I kind of was opened up to this world. And it was when I was about 15 and we were driving down the highway on the way home from school. And there was a woman in front of us who had a bumper sticker, something to do with paganism. And it was like, I don't know, honk if you're pagan, or trust me, I'm pagan, or something like that, something to that
Kiss
effect.
me, I'm pagan.
And
Yep.
I saw that bumper sticker. Yeah, kiss me, I'm pagan, something like that. And it was something silly. And I went, pagan. Ooh, and you know, sometimes there are things that just like spark something in your mind and you just go, oh, what is that? Oh, I'm curious to know more about that. And went home and Googled it, as I was saying, with our very rudimentary, like beginning internet, not like it is now. And I do remember finding was it an op shop? I think it was an op shop or a secondhand bookstore. Silver Ravenwolf book, sorry, it's called Teen Witch. I actually have it back here, but that kind of was my gateway book to explaining not just paganism, but witchcraft as well. And so I know a lot of people kind of, look down on Silver Ravenwolf, but hey, however you get into it, you get into it. And it was a really, I still maintain it was a really good beginning guide for me. And so that was 15. And I think around that age, my cousin gave me my first deck of cards as well, which I still have. And they were hers and she just didn't want them anymore. And she thought, why not give it to you? And yeah, little did she know. Little did she know. She probably has more to do with my story than she realizes. And so I've been reading cards since I was 15 as well. And then I fell down the rabbit hole of the Fae, which I've always been connected to since I was a child, like a little child. And I bought my first deck, and that was the Brian Froud Fairies deck. And I remember very distinctly, I was so excited to find that one. Also secondhand, look at me go.
It's a
Saving the
stunning
environment
deck.
and all
Absolutely
that jazz.
stunning.
And it's so beautiful. And that one is still my favorite. I have some of his others, but that one just has a special place in my heart. And I don't use it as much anymore, but I was thinking about it the other day. I should pull it back out. And that's just kind of it. And it just kept going. I kept, being the little Capricorn I am, devouring books and internet web pages. And I remember I did my senior history project on the ancient Celts and the Druids. And actually at my high school, all of those websites were blocked about the Druids because it was a Christian high school. So yeah, I literally had to do all of my research either in books or actually mostly books from the public library, not from my school's library, and then at home because I couldn't access any of the information. Luckily, I had a very open-minded teacher and he did not mind at all. But yeah, it was, it was a love affair from the very beginning. And, sometimes you just get those little nudges from the universe and your guides that are like, this is for you. And that's how it went. But as we were saying, I don't think that there's never going to be a permission slip handed to you. Unfortunately, we don't get Hogwarts letters. That would have been, I can't tell you how many nights I lay in bed just wishing and hoping that my Hogwarts letter would come. I mean, I think that's actually, I was reading Harry Potter and witchy books long before I ever discovered paganism. So to be honest, it was probably a calling from a very young age.
Yeah.
And I was always in the kitchen doing my kitchen witch things. But uh, you know, that defining moment was kind of what I classify as like my start to being a proper, a proper witch. But
Yeah.
you just kind of listen to those nudges and roll with it.
But yeah, the next question I've got here is, how do you know that the witchy way is kind of meant for you? Which is very much what you were just sort of saying. It's just you get those nudges and you just can't ignore them. And we were talking before, and I was like, it's almost like people are waiting for the sorting hat to give them permission as to what direction in life they're allowed to partake in. And I don't think you have, in order to be a witch, you don't have to drop everything that you're doing and solely do this for your entire life forever. Like, you're allowed to just dabble however you want to. And honestly, what the fuck is witching? What is being a witch? It is so different depending on culture, on circumstance, on finances, on dedication, on energy levels. Like, you're allowed to witch as much or as little as you want and still feel resonant to that energy and that term and everything else. So, how do you know the witchy way is meant for you? Because you fucking like it. Because it brings you joy. It gives you this level of passion that you don't have, I don't know, maybe doing your taxes. Like, it doesn't have to be as big and overwhelming as I think a lot of people feel it's supposed to look. Like, just do it because you enjoy it. It's some people scrapbook, some people crochet, some people burn herbs on the weekend, or they'll sit in gratitude and meditation. Maybe that's your version of witching. Like, whatever, man. It's your term. You define it however you'd like to. If that's how you know it's meant for you.
Maybe some people run naked under the full moon. That's Ellene's jam
I
too.
I have.
Actually, that brings me to a question. This wasn't submitted, but this is a question that I like to ask people, especially when we're doing more of a witchy episode. And that is, I like to ask my guest, do you identify as a witch? Like, what kind of term do you resonate with to describe your own practice? And, also for you, it'd be interesting to know how you feel about what the word witch means, which
Yeah.
we may have mentioned before, but I think it'd be good to cover it again.
Yeah, look, I actually find that really, really tricky because if I could find a particular term to sum up everything that I do, I'd find that really helpful. I haven't come across one yet. So that's kind of why my business name is New Age Naturopath, because and that's why like my little motto underneath is naturopath by trade, witch by nature, because it kind of encompasses both sides of what I do and how I am to a point though. Like, it still probably doesn't quite get to the level or depth that I'm wanting a term to do. I love the term witch. It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form. I also get a kick out of how bizarre people look at me when I say it. Like, I love it because then they got more questions and it opens up conversation out of just pure curiosity. So yeah, I like it. I don't know that it's the perfect word for me, but it definitely describes me to a point. Yeah. And I think for me, what a witch
Yeah.
means is really just a woman honing. And okay, that's not fair. A person, because a witch can be male or female or whatever else. So for me, it's a person who is standing in their own personal empowerment through their like through whatever their energy is. So like if you're some people really resonate with kitchen witchery, some people really resonate with fire witching, like whatever your element is and that empowers you and you can stand in that, go for gold. I kind of dabble with a few things whenever I'm doing my work. So but it's like the energy is always you. Doesn't matter what your tool is, the energy is always coming from you, from source. You're always working in that space. So yeah, that's what I think a witch is. A very powerful
Yeah.
individual because they know they know their own power.
This actually leads perfectly into another question that was submitted, which is, what is influencing like a card pick or any sort of divination in practice? So,
Yep.
pendulum sessions, things like that. So I think that the idea behind this question is it your own energy influencing it? Is it spirit? Is it like a spirit? Is it your guides? Is it a combination of everything? How do you see that?
Okay. So I'll use the pendulum for example because that is my everyday tool. Here's one I prepared earlier. So when I'm working with the pendulum, the biggest thing that I have to do in order to get accurate answers is to have total and utter detachment from the outcome, from the answer, and the expectation that the client or myself may have. That's a really poignant thing. So when you do that, it's allowing you to be a much clearer channel for whatever you're working with, whoever you're working with. Now, when I say whoever or whatever you're working with, that is up to you as to the intention that you are putting forward and who you will allow energetically into that space. So when people are like, oh, I don't know who's coming in, I would probably be like, okay, you probably need to work on doing some exercises around intuition, on your boundaries, on what you believe in. Because if you believe that you're going to be potentially bringing in a bad energy, yeah, well, you will. Like, you absolutely will because you're setting that intention. And whether that bad energy is just a different variation of your energy
Mm-hmm.
projecting itself out for your own reflection, you may not see it that way and it may cause a bigger lot of scare for you than what it actually needs to. So when I'm working with that person's higher self, I'm working with their ancestors, and I'm working with their guides. And obviously, when I'm channeling, I'm also channeling through source because as much as I'd like to think I'm this amazing, divine, phenomenal being, which I am, um, this is coming from
Mm-hmm.
connection, and it's bigger than me. It's definitely not a me thing. If it was, I'd probably explode. So it's just about allowing that to come through safely and from a detached space. Um, so
Yeah.
so how do I tell the difference? Is essentially I've been doing this long enough that I know who I'm working with, and I know when the energy in the room feels off. And I'm able to discern that very, very quickly. I'm able to clear that very, very quickly and get back to the task at hand. So practice, I guess, is the really short way of saying everything that I just said. A lot of practice.
Yeah. I think my opinions on and like my views on this have shifted a little bit over the
Yeah.
last few years, which is interesting. And that's something to note for people is that your practice should be ever evolving. If you think you know it all, you don't. Stop now.
Yes,
Do not
please.
collect $200. Do not pass go. That's I think one of the first things they teach you when you're learning to be a naturopath is that if you think you know it all, just quit
Yep.
because that leads to negative things coming through in your practice, and especially if you're working with other people, and you're taking some sort of responsibility for the information and guidance you're giving to another person. It's
Yep.
important not to have a god complex, essentially, or a goddess complex, as it may be. But I think I always did take things from a very scientific perspective, especially because I felt like that was when I was younger, definitely the only way to explain it to the people in my life was from a very logical, informed perspective.
Yeah.
So I do definitely believe that when we're using things like pendulum and cards, particularly for ourselves, like when we're doing a reading for ourselves, it is channeling basically our higher self and our own energy to find an answer that really we already know within us, but we just consciously either don't want to admit or maybe we're just a little bit confused. It's a really nice way to focus and channel in that our own energy to give us ourselves our own guidance.
It's
But I
tangible. It
do
gives you
think that there's
something
a
to
space where we also can
feel.
call in and work with like your guides or spirit or a deity even. If you're bringing that intention and setting the space to connect with that other power, I think that there's a possibility for that as well. So as you said, and as everything with witchcraft, it pretty much comes back to intention. So that's the way that I see it now. It's a mix of both.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. And I just think that there's more, and this just comes from a lack of practice, a lack of exposure as well, that you will naturally be a bit more fearful and reverent of the process if you haven't exposed yourself to it, haven't had a feel, and also if you don't fully trust yourself, which, you that is a constant relationship that you'll be growing within yourself anyway. But I would have to say if you can start with that emotional non-attachment in the beginning, it it helps you get some really clear answers. And like you were saying, yeah, it doesn't really matter what the tool is, whether you're working with cards or pendulum or the dowsing rods or whatever your tool of choice is, throwing bones even. It's like you know that it's it's just a tangible variation of your own innate magic. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what was your next question? Who
My
who
next
wrote in
question
what?
is for
Actually,
both
don't you
of
don't need to
us.
tell us who wrote it in. But
I've got had to write these down. The My very next question is for both of us. What does your husband think of your career?
mm, okay. Do you want me to answer first, or do you want to answer first?
I'm happy either way, baby.
Well, I'll start with this one then, because mine's a bit different to yours, pretty much different and then also similar. But I think my partner is he's very conventional actually in a lot of ways. And so we are a bit of a yin yang situation in pretty much
Muggle.
every way, right down to our star sign. Yeah. So, and our natal charts. So, yeah, he is very rooted in society and societal norms in the way that he approaches things to start with. And then over time, he comes around. um, but it's a slow process for him. He does, he loves that I love what I love and that I find joy in it. But he does sometimes struggle with the feeling of realness for him, especially because he doesn't really dabble. He does, but he doesn't. So he
Yeah.
has a pendulum that he picked out, and he has his own deck of cards and things like that. And he does talk about his human design, as we all learned that he went through that phase. He's a projector, in case anybody wanted to know, and he's not good
And
at
if you
waiting for his
don't know, he'll
invitation.
tell you anyway, so it's
But
fine.
um, yeah, so he loves that I love it, and that I, work with these kinds of things, and that people find comfort and, make progress in their lives with what I offer and what I do. But he himself is very on the fence. He finds it hard to let himself believe it.
Yep.
So even with flower essences, which does, he says he's an atheist, but we know he's not an atheist because he's super freaked out by ghosts and spirits, like super freaked out. And he also gets freaked out by flower essences. So sometimes he'll use them, and then sometimes he goes, hard no. Don't let it come near me. And then sometimes he'll love herbs, like he'll use those kava drops.
Yep.
And then sometimes he's like, get that passion flower away from me. So I think with him, it's like a self-limiting thing. He doesn't want to believe that those things could be real because that's challenging for him. So yeah, we have a bit of a dance with that. Um,
It's the muggle
but yeah,
struggle.
I mean, it's part of his journey, right? And you can never force somebody to fully believe the same way that you believe. He has to
Yeah.
come to it in his own time. But
Yeah.
he loves
Yeah.
the Sabbats as well, and he loves the Wheel of the Year. So he's a real mix.
He's a yep. He's a character. My husband is also Greek. So again, kind of comes from that just inherently sort of superstitious kind of people. But within that comes like, my grandparents, I have books behind me that my grandmother would read Greek astrology from, and she would have a horoscope check. My grandfather used to do the coffee cup readings, and then they would argue about what was in the coffee cup that they were each seeing. So, like again, naturally, sort of, they're both skeptical and superstitious at the same time. Again, we're a funny people. So George also comes from similar stock, and but he's so on board. He's so on board, but also doesn't understand why because he's so logical. Like he's incredibly logical and incredibly intuitive at the same time. And again, he has that real muggle struggle with inside of him as well because it
Muggle
shouldn't work.
struggle.
These things shouldn't, they logically don't make sense. And yet here they are working. and I love it, but why? I actually find flower essences, and there's no one else. There is literally no one else I've ever treated where flower essences don't work, but flower essences don't seem to work on him, which really frustrates me because that would make my life so much easier. But look, George is
Oh,
completely, he is on board. He loves what I do. He has my business cards in his wallet.
I
He
didn't know
hands them
that.
out to people. He is the sweetest thing ever. Like, he's also a massive hypochondriac, so he loves the fact that I'm a naturopath because he will feel anything, and he's like, I might need some herbs. Like, what's the supplement I need for this? Or I'm feeling this. Could you please make me a tea to make these things go away? Yes, yes, my darling. So yeah, he's so on board that I'm like, get a little bit off, but also I'm super grateful because he lets me have the space that I need in order to do this work, and without, I think, realizing how much I've rubbed off on him, his friends and people that he's worked with in the different fields naturally gravitate towards him and sort of pour their hearts out to him, whereas before that's not the kind of space that he would hold for people. So it's, yeah, yeah, he's on board. He likes it. He likes it too much, and I'm here for it. And yeah, it's also really helped me with my level of acceptance of it, because when I started doing this sort of stuff, I was already like, oh my god, naturopathy is already so left of center for most people. Now I want to start swinging rocks on strings and charging people for it and helping them with their emotions. Like, I'm insane. But he was so much more on board so much sooner than what I was, which really helped with my level of acceptance within myself.
So, our next question
Mm-hmm.
is: are pagan gods believed to be real gods of the world or worlds, or are they what humans created and are used as guidance for different walks of life as a psychological mental support? And so, the way I interpret that is, basically, are they an actual deity, that like person that like looks down on you? There's a word for this. I was just reading in Frances Billinghurst's book you lent me or gave me, but
It's
um,
yours.
basically, is it like the Christian God where like there's a dude up there looking down at you, or is it something that we're creating and that we use as an archetype to help ourselves feel better, basically,
A
and like
good
to work with our
question.
mental health and our psychological health? And it is a good question. I think also it's worth telling that, like, would you consider yourself of the pagan persuasion?
Look, I consider myself spiritual. Um, And I say that because if you look, I'm christened Greek Orthodox. Like, you come out of your mother's womb and they throw you in the tub and everyone starts blessing you in the Greek Orthodox Church. And it's a beautiful ritual, it's a beautiful ceremony, and everything that comes with it. So by birth, yes, Greek Orthodox. And like, we're in the cross and the evil eye as we speak. But again, that really ties into my spirituality rather than religion, if that makes sense. Because as much as I completely am here for all forms of Christ energy in its highest, which, in a very high form that it is in, I am equally here for any of the Parthenons that resonate with me to my highest ability as well. So the question about if I'm pagan or not, I don't know. Again, I just think spiritualist, if that's a fucking word, I don't even know. It's the energy that I
Mm.
resonate with. And like
Yeah,
like
no,
you
I
were
think it
saying with,
actually is.
yeah, because it's like as your views have changed and your understanding has changed as you've grown and worked in this field, I think so does your spirituality, with things that you resonate with that you can take away from that have served its purpose, and then things that will naturally also fall away as they no longer need to serve a purpose. So, yeah, spiritualist, I guess, is
Mm.
the term, with all the confidence in my voice on
Yeah.
that one. So, again, with the question, are gods like a physical, real energy slash entity, or are they personifications of human archetypes? I think both. I think, like, if I can speak from like the Greek perspective on the Greek gods, both, because it is the story of creation of, like, of Greece, which is known as the land of the gods, not just because of the gods, of just how freaking beautiful that country is. And it's also to help with a moral compass. Like it serves so many different areas of the human experience. And if you look at the Egyptian pantheon, there's such a and Greek in all fairness, but specifically the Egyptian, there is such a strong correlation with extraterrestrial information. So is it even a human like personification, or is it something that was downloaded through some other amazing being from this universe? Who knows? But at the end of the day, if you resonate with it and it aligns with you and you can work with it and help understand yourself better, 10 points. I love it.
Yeah, I think I agree. It can be a bit of both. So I do believe there's like this divine undercurrent to the universe, and I do believe, I almost believe in one big energy, but that it obviously has like a masculine, feminine, light, dark. I believe in dualities, and I think that
Yeah.
the universe is built on dualities. So that's one thing. I had this dream, which I've talked about with you many times, but I had this dream when I was younger, and I was in a jungle, and it's so still crystal clear to this day, which is why I know it was not a normal dream, because I don't remember any of my other ones pretty much. But I remember this one, and I was walking on these stepping stones and through the jungle, and there were all these different deities on these stepping stones. There was Jesus, and there was the Hindu gods, and like Ganesha, and there were some pagan gods, and they basically just said we are the omni god, like we are all facets of the same divine energy. And
Yeah.
so that is kind of like my approach, and has been since, again, this all happened when I was about 15. Lots went down that year, but I think like that is how I see it. But then also, I think the best way I could describe it is the fool's journey in the tarot. So
Yeah.
I kind of see like maybe the stories of the gods, the fool's journey in the tarot. They're basically like the Bible to me, I suppose, now that I actually think about it, because the Bible really is just a book of lessons.
Yeah.
And I mean, people are probably going to be really offended by me saying that, but
Well, it's a book of teachings,
it's
however
kind
you
of a
want to
book of
take it.
lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Fool's Journey is also a journey of lessons and a story of lessons and teachings. And then the gods and their journeys are also lessons and teachings. And so I think from a psychological perspective, absolutely, it gives us something to anchor with, to identify with, to learn from, to, glean wisdom from. But then also, is there actually literally a divine energy? Yes, I do believe so. And
Yeah.
I do kind of see that from like a Celtic pagan perspective, with the goddess, mother goddess, and the horned god, and their journey. And they have a cycle as well. So there's
Yeah.
a story there too, where you can learn more, and, gain more insight into it. We're all just trying to figure it out. We're all just trying to figure stuff out, right? Like we're all just clueless little animals just running around going, help me. And so these stories help us to learn and understand ourselves a little bit better,
Absolutely.
while we're in our meat suits for this
Well,
period of
like
time.
when you think about how the human brain,
So eloquently put.
yeah, no, this, especially from the vegan, well done. When it comes to like the way the human brain works, it's like we need to fit things into boxes, to compartmentalize things, to make them make sense. We literally sit here go, make this make sense. So regardless on what culture you come from, there is an ancient story around the gods and creation and all sorts of things. And what I love about, I guess, the pagan gods, again, from whatever culture we're looking at, there is one for agriculture, there is one for love and fidelity, there's one for marriage, there's one for lack of inhibitions and just let yourself be you. Underworld, heaven, everything. And it helps us sort of pigeonhole these ideas of morality and a sense of self as to how we want to stand in our own energy. There's a lot more freedom around that when we can see it in a lot of different ways. Sometimes when it is just all in that one being, makes it very difficult to be this one perfect person who is able to figure all this shit out. And I that's why I love the idea of like you said, I love that analogy in the dream that you had where you saw all the different gods, because it is one of the same. And I know people who are really, really staunch one way and nothing else will find that blasphemous and awful. But we're talking about a much higher energy and vibration than the human experience. And if you seeing it in one person is the way that you're able to attach to things, then by all means, if you're able to understand all the different parts of you through the different storytellings of mythology, which I can say I personally do, and helps it helps in so many different ways. And you will find that at different parts of your life, if that is how you resonate, that different deities will come to you, or you will seek them out, and it works as a teacher for that part of your life. Beautiful.
Yes. I think I really like what you just said, and it really this is another controversial thing that I'm going to say, and I know this is a whole huge topic that maybe we should delve into one day, but maybe it should be in a different setting. I don't know, but
Is it an unpopular opinion? Because I
it
love
does
those.
touch on. So I'm just going to say it. So basically, we all were native peoples to some land.
Yep.
And this is all coming back to a time where storytelling was how people communicated with each other. And it is how, our human brains are able to perceive and understand the divine. Because I think if we were able to really see and experience the divine in all of its fullness and expansiveness, we probably wouldn't be able to handle it in a human sack form. So I think, those stories are ways for us to connect with, perceive and identify with the divine. And storytelling was a way that we communicated these understandings with each other.
Yeah.
And it's because we all originally were indigenous to a land, and that is just how that all evolved. So, I do think it's really cool because you get to see, you might see Aztec teachings, and you might see Greek teachings, and you might see, um, you know, Celtic pagan teachings, and they do all have, even Native American teachings and stories and parables, if you will, they all have the same kind of foundational pillars, talking about elements, talking about a deity figure or multiple deity figures, but all stories about fertility, stories about the land, stories about their people, and how we should be good to each other, and all of these things. And that same undercurrent and the same storylines turn up time and time again throughout cultures across the globe. So I do think that there's so much to be learnt from also looking at other people's cultures and realizing that we're not alone in the stories that are handed down to us, or that we discover about our own heritage and our own, where we came from, basically.
Yeah. No, couldn't agree more.
What was your last question? I think you had one more from
I
your
have actually, this is a
Instagram
question
community.
I have. Yeah, because I think we've answered all the other ones I've had. This one was, and I think you've actually already answered it. What was your very first deck, which you said was the beautiful, Fairies one by Brian Froud. Stunning deck. My very first deck, and the reason why I wanted to ask about that is because usually that's like the gateway to the rest of the insanity that we have bought and purchased and have. It just starts off here. And mine is a Lucy Cavendish one.
Mm-hmm.
I bought that. I was in college, was studying naturopathy, and I discovered this cute little hippie store in Stone's Corner. I think it was some Raindrops. It had like a couple of names, which is why I struggle to remember it. But it's a cute little store, and the beautiful lady there was like, "Oh, what are you into?" And I just, as soon as I walked in, I was like, "That." It took me ages to actually go into that store because I used to get migraines going in there. So hilarious, considering I'm now surrounded by my own version of that store. And it's the Oracle of the Mermaids by Lucy Cav, and I love it. It's a
Love Lucy
special
Cavendish.
deck. Selena Fenich does the illustration, and like, stop it. I feel like she's like the grown up Shirley Barber. If anyone knows like the books from when we were kids of Shirley Barber, like illustrations, like stunning. I feel like Selena Fenich is like, yeah, like the grown up version of that. So like just stunning, just disgustingly beautiful. Well, okay, we're just going for the dramatic cards today. That's fine. Sure, that's no reflection on life. Where's a happy one? Those ones were big ones. Speaking of goddesses, the return of Aphrodite. So yes, that was my first deck, and I still use it
Beautiful.
today. I specifically use it for my beautiful, mainly women, but also every now and then I get a little man who's a Cancer or a Pisces that needs a bit of a reading. Very emotional sweethearts. So yeah, for my emotional water babies, this is where I usually go to when it comes to a card reading, especially if there's a romance element that needs to be better understood. I find these cards are really, really good for that. So that was my question.
Okay, I love it. I think yeah, I like the first deck I got actually was the one from my cousin, but it's a bit different. But the first one I bought for myself was definitely Brian Froud, and I feel like I should just quickly grab the because we're doing a show and tell. One
Yes,
second.
please.
So, because we're doing show and tell and this goes on YouTube, I thought I would also show my first deck. So it doesn't have its box. It's not in its box. It has its box somewhere, but these are the cards. So this is the back of them.
I love those cards.
And the amazing thing about Brian Froud's work is the longer you look at it, the more you see and the more you discover. And his work was very revolutionary actually when it first was released because it really challenged the way that people perceived the Fae. And, up until then, a lot of the representations of Fae, probably outside of Ireland, were these cute little, pink fairies
Tinkerbell.
with magic sparkles. And then Brian came along and he did things like this. And he did things like, what else? Oh, like this. Oh, hang on. There we go. Like that one, that guy there.
Yeah.
And that really shook people because it just was different to how they had ever thought about the Fae kind of in Western society as it is now. Obviously, old Ireland, bit different, but like, look at this. And you can see faces if you look. So that was my first deck that I bought for myself, and I still absolutely love it. So do we have time for one more question?
Yes. I've got none left. Go for it.
Okay. Let's see.
So for me, tarot versus oracle and the difference between. I used to work in a crystal store in Adelaide, so I used to have to answer this a lot. For me, the tarot is very it's quite direct. Each card has a meaning. There is room for interpretation, but it's still housed within this is what this card means. I don't love it for a yes and a no kind of question because it's more of it gives you quite an extended answer. So I wouldn't go yes or no with a tarot personally. You can, but it depends how well you know your tarot. So yeah, each card has a very specific meaning, open to interpretation to a point, but this is what it means. Oracle is like when you're a kid and you're lying on the ground and you're looking up at the clouds. You see the Loch Ness monster, I see a giraffe. We're both right. It's more open to your interpretation and how you're perceiving that energy coming through the beautiful pictures. So even with like the Oracle of the Mermaids, so to speak. Here we go. Not that one. Oh, okay. Rude. We have this beautiful card here, which says fertility, right? So this could mean that someone is pregnant, falling pregnant, struggling to fall pregnant, or about to birth an idea, something is coming through. Someone else could hear that and hear suffering. They could hear the struggle. They could hear something completely different behind it because it's so open to you and how you feel about the words, the pictures, and everything in between. It's much more intuitive, I would say, from that aspect. And maybe intuitive is not the right word, maybe much more personal from that aspect. Then you have Lenormand, which is completely different. Again, doesn't fall within Oracle or Tarot. This is a deck that I have called the Cute Little Tarot because it is all of those things. Sorry, the Cute Little Lenormand. Very cute, very small, very basic pictures, but each one means something in combination with something else. You read it completely differently, and it makes tarot look like a soft, sweet little pussycat. It is brutal. Yes and no's you can do for sure, but it is look, it's brutal. It's harsh. And I have unfortunately had to predict deaths and all sorts of things with it. Whereas when you're looking at the death and the devil card within tarot, it's much more like rebirth and endings. This is like, bitch, you dead. So savage. So we've got soft, medium, and hard when it comes to the way we read cards. That would be how I describe it.
That is such an interesting way to sum that up, but also kind of true. And yeah, I think I don't have a lot to add to that other than like with using cards, I think there's a difference between just reading the cards and also um, bringing in your intuition
Yes.
and connections with the divine into it as well. So with all of them, even though like, the Lenormand and the tarot have much more defined and kind of hard, fast rules with how the cards are to be interpreted, there's also like a level of intuition that's coming through because sure, okay, you're going to have money troubles in the future. Great. Okay. But then you tune in and you get like a download about why this person's going to have money troubles.
Yeah.
And, or you're able to read them all together like a beautiful harmony that tells a story. And then you are able to feel into it. And that's when the really, really good messages come through. So
Yeah.
not to say you can't experiment. And, Oracle is great for learning this, I think. Actually, I think it gets a bad name because it's, fluffy. But actually, I think Oracle is such a good tool for developing your intuition because it is so open
100%.
and really like, you can go off the guidebook, you can go off intuition alone. I like to do a mix of both. But yeah, just being able to see something that's so broad and be able to really listen to that person's energy and their team and your team and, what messages are coming through specifically for them and then be able to tell them that from something that was so broad and vague. Like, oh, there's a dolphin on this card. It says freedom. But like being able to actually like nail that person to the wall with, exactly the message they need to hear. That's such an Ellene way to put it. But it really gives you that validation and you're able to start to discern between what's your imagination and what is intuition and guidance coming from your divine team. So
100%.
that's just 100%. A little add-on to that.
Yeah. It again, I'm going from just the basic, these are the cards, just roughly how they work. But as soon as you put a human in that space with you, it changes everything because it changes the way the story needs to be told.
Our last question, are we going to throw a wild card in here? Because we actually ended up talking pretty much entirely about witchy things, as tends to happen. However, we are also naturopaths and herbalists. And so I loved this question. What are your top 5 forever herbs and why? So what are your like 5 herbs that are ride or die, best friends for life kind of plants?
Okay. So this is tricky because it will, again, depend on the area of life that we are working with. But to be very broad and very vague and to answer the question within the time restraint, licorice tincture from my herbalist days. Licorice is my absolute favorite. It is the Windex of the herbal world. It is everything. It does everything: nervous system, digestive system, adrenals, blood sugar regulation. I love the way it tastes, and anyone who doesn't like licorice can go jump. It is the best, I think, one of the best herbs. Yeah.
Gross.
Love it. Okay, licorice. Chamomile. I'm sorry. Who doesn't like a warm hug? Like the best herb for everything nervous system related, but also just a genuine nurturer of the soul. Love, 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 love. I'm literally trying to look around my room being like, what do I use? Everything. Rosemary. Again, I'm Greek. It would be rude if I didn't acknowledge rosemary. I think they'd take my Greek card away from me. What else do I love? What's in my gut? Oh, mugwort. I love my mugwort so much. Because again, spiritual protection, psychic development, all of those things, but also I find when I take that, it just, and I usually have it in a tea, it just does a different level of grounding energy with me. I'm usually quite highly strung. I don't know if anyone's noticed. and it just helps to soothe that feminine just energy so that I'm not working from this nervous space, that I'm just working from a really balanced, centered, feminine energy, whether that's in rage or in peace. Either way, it's balanced. That's 4. Number 5 would be I'm struggling between like thyme and even like pomegranate. Like, yeah, because like I love thyme, obviously, taste and everything, antimicrobial.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, like they're completely different. 5 is not enough. And they work in different areas of my life. So, like, obviously, yeah, thyme is antimicrobial, great for the immune system, great for just beautiful taste, goes on everything. And then you've got like pomegranate, which I'm just going to say is my 6th little wild card because I'm addicted to everything pomegranate. You can use the skins for, like, you grind that up and it's a really good prebiotic, really great for any sort of intestinal worm sort of situation. The seeds as well, similar, amazing for fertility. Work that you do, anything to do with underworld gods, the chthonic gods, pomegranate is that, the fruit of the underworld. Death, rebirth. It's just amazing. All feminine things.
I love that.
Pomegranate. I'm
I wouldn't
obsessed.
have picked pomegranate.
My wild card.
Yeah, I love that.
Your turn.
5, obviously, it depends on what context you're talking about, as you said, because, you know, what's my top favorite herbs versus, like, what are the top 5 herbs I use the most in clinic
Yeah.
would be 2 different, or, like, you know, in sessions with people would be 2 different things.
Yeah.
Probably, well, there's overlap, but the first one that comes to mind is oats. I love oats.
You do.
It's crazy. People
Yeah.
get so surprised, but I love eating them. I love cooking with them in general. They're so supportive for the nervous system. They're a nutritive herb, so they're really gentle, but they really build the system back up. So they're remineralizing and, yeah, just really, if you're feeling really depleted and, you know, maybe you want to work on your hair, skin, and nails, maybe your nervous system is super on edge and fried and you just need a bit of love, absolutely oats. So that's my number 1, which again has shocked people, but it's true.
No, I get it.
And then I also love rosemary is one of mine as well. I just think I've used it from the very beginning. And it's so useful. You can use it with parasites. You can use it with viruses, bacteria. It tastes freaking good. It can, you know, facilitate brain health as well. Like, you know, support
Liver.
healthy brain function. And it supports liver detoxification, which they kind of linked. All around, I just love rosemary. And, you know, I do think it's kind of one of my soul friends. So it also goes great with chocolate, which, you know, is one of my faves too.
And lamb.
What else is one of my favorites? Ooh. And, well, for the non-vegans and lamb. But also potatoes. I mean, rosemary potatoes, like, you cannot go past rosemary and sea salt potatoes. Oh, my God.
Oh, dude, for you, mushrooms.
Now. I'm also looking around, like, what are my favorites? Well, I do think, actually,
we forgot cacao.
Mushrooms, turkey tail mushroom.
Yeah.
Kate, I haven't finished mine yet, girl. But yes, you are right. Turkey tail mushroom probably is one of my favorites. As I've been mentioning online, it's so good for your immune system. It's so good for supporting general well-being. It's anti-cancer, so it helps to support healthy cell apoptosis. So it helps to kill off cells that are over replicating or replicating in a funny way, which is how it has the anti-cancer effects. But it also is supportive alongside other cancer therapies, so that's really cool. But all around, like, you know, it has adaptogenic qualities, so it helps to regulate your nervous system, gut function, hormones. I just love turkey tail, and it's so abundant. So it's one of the mushrooms that grows on almost every continent on Earth. I think there's only one that it doesn't grow natively on, so I think that's really cool too. That's because cool. It's a very abundant medicine.
Yeah.
But mushrooms in general, I just love our medicinal and just culinary mushrooms. One day I will try morel. Cacao, I'm going to steal that. Yes, cacao obviously is a plant, is a herb, and she is our lifeblood. I'm going to speak for Ellene too here. Cacao, hook it to our veins. and she is so nourishing, so nutrient dense, which is amazing. And you know, they used to use it, you know, in Aztec cultures, and similar cultures to support themselves for a day of work in the fields. So it really is so rich in iron and magnesium and minerals and healthy fats, which are crucial for a well functioning nervous system. I just, you know, brain health, fertility, I reckon, and just all around, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So I think that's 4 so far. And then let me think about this for a second, because it's a very hard question. I think, you know, as we get older, the herbs, and just as we go through different stages of life, we have different experiences with plants. But I've also got a two-parter. So St. John's wort has become a very close pal of mine.
Yeah.
And I just think, you know, like, it is sunshine in a plant, and it helps to see a light in the darkness. It helps to bring joy. It is so good for the immune system if you're under the weather, and it helps with skin conditions. It's great topically. I just think it's also a very abundant plant, and it can grow almost everywhere. So St. John's wort is one of my faves. And then the other one that kind of tied with St. John's wort is mugwort. And mugwort and I have an interesting relationship, just because I cut my finger making a mugwort salve, but we're still best friends. So there was one, cinnamon, because
Yes.
it is good for every magical use ever.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that deserves an honorable mention, especially in magical practice. It is like, if you've got to have one plant, cinnamon. So that is about all we have time for today, but it's been so great answering your questions, and I love always getting to chat with Ellene. And hopefully you'll be seeing more of her on the podcast. You know, you can go and beg her to do some more episodes. And just thank you so much for being here, Len, and hanging out and answering some of our community's questions with me.
You don't have to bribe me too hard for me to sit here and talk about all of my favorite things. But I did actually have to put makeup on this morning, so I looked human. So don't expect me to always look this nice when I do a podcast. No. But I feel like I've now started too high up. But that's fine. I'm here for it. Thank you so much for wanting to have me here. Thank you for asking all of these amazing questions, guys. I really appreciate it. It gets my brain thinking. And I will try and keep swearing and umming to a minimum.
And where can people find you real quick?
People can find me.
They want to connect with you?
Mainly on Instagram, because I'm too old for any other platform. I love my Instagram, Ellene New Age Naturopath. The way my name is spelled is different from your traditional Ellene's, so find my links somewhere that Hannah will put them. You can book your one-on-one sessions with me online, and I would love to see you, would love to work with you and be a part of your journey in any way possible.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for being here, guys. Thanks for listening. Leave us a comment or review. We'd love that. And we'll talk to you all again soon.
Thank you. Bye.